It's time to celebrate. Keira Bell won her case. It is now illegal to prescribe puberty blockers to a child under the age of 16, and this will have worldwide ramifications. I'm gonna read you guys the article from the Post Millennial. Okay, here it is, Post Millennial. International news. UK High Court disallows use of puberty blockers in children under 16. Keira Bell wins her case. There she is, phenomenal, strong, amazing woman. She came out the other side of this gender cult. She fought back and she won. She is a warrior. She is an Amazon. She is phenomenal. Keira Bell won her case. It is now unlawful for clinics specializing in transgender affirmative health care to prescribe puberty blockers to children as a result of a landmark judgment handed down Tuesday on December 1st, 2020. Bell's case, which was heard in London's High Court, will have worldwide implications for the burgeoning trans healthcare industry, the profits of which depend on drawing growing numbers of children into the system. Here's a tweet from the LGB, one of two actually. The forthcoming ruling in the Keira Bell case could reverberate worldwide. Evidence shows a massive increase in the number of girls, mostly lesbians, identifying as boys. Cross-sex hormones produce irreversible effects, often including infertility. Keira Bell, 23, applied for judicial review of the Tavistock Gender Identity Clinic's policy of administering off-label prostate cancer drugs to children experiencing body dysmorphia for a wide range of reasons. Her case was based in her own experience. Listen, okay, I'm going to say that again. Administering off-label prostate cancer drug to children experiencing body dysmorphia. Like, that sentence alone should terrify the masses. What in the fuck? Here's the tweet from Alison Bailey that contains the legal documents that I will read for you. Justice of Wales in England are on the application of Quincy Bell and A. V. Tavistock and Portman, NHS Trust and Others, 2020, EWHC 3274, admin in brackets. 1st of December, 2020. Summary. Judges: Dame Victoria Sharp P., Lord Justice Lewis, Mrs. Justice Leven. 1. This claim for judicial review concerned the lawfulness of the practice of the Tavistock and Portman NHS Trust through its Gender Identity Development Service, GIDS, of prescribing puberty-suppressing drugs to children who experience gender dysphoria. Gender dysphoria is a condition where persons experience distress because of a mismatch between their perceived identity and their natal sex, that is, their sex at birth. Such persons have a strong desire to live according to their perceived identity rather than their natal sex. The puberty-blocking drugs were prescribed to children as young as 10 to halt the process of puberty. That is, the biological processes that would otherwise occur and would lead to the development of the primary and secondary sexual characteristics. 2. There were two claimants. Quincy Bell was born a female and, at about the age of 15, was prescribed puberty-blocking drugs to halt the process of developing female sexual characteristics. She eventually transitioned to a male, having taken cross-sex hormones to promote male characteristics, and then undergoing surgery. A is the mother of a 15-year-old girl. A is concerned that her daughter may be referred to the Gender Identity Development Service and may be prescribed puberty blockers. The claimants contended that the practice of prescribing puberty-blocking drugs to children under 18 was unlawful as they lacked competence to give valid consent to the treatment. 3. The court in this case was concerned with the legal requirements for obtaining consent for the carrying out of medical treatment. The court was not concerned with deciding whether there were benefits or disbenefits in treating children with gender dysphoria with puberty-blocking drugs. The legal issue is the case concerned identifying the circumstances in which a child was competent as a matter of law to give valid consent to treatment. 4. The court held that in order for a child to be competent to give valid consent, the child would have to understand, retain, and weigh the following information. 1. The immediate consequence of the treatment in physical and psychological terms. 2. The fact that the vast majority of patients taking puberty-blocking drugs proceed to take cross-sex hormones and are therefore a pathway to much greater medical interventions. 3. The relationship between taking cross-sex hormones and subsequent surgery, with the implication of such surgery. 4. The fact that cross-sex hormones may well lead to a loss of fertility. 5. The impact of cross-sex hormones on sexual function. 6. The impact that taking this step on this treatment pathway may have on future and lifelong relationships. 7. The unknown physical consequences of taking puberty-blocking drugs. And 8. The fact that evidence base for this treatment is as yet highly uncertain. 5. The court considered that it was highly unlikely that a child aged 13 or under would be competent to give consent to the administration of puberty blockers. It was also doubtful that a child aged 14 or 15 could understand and weigh the long-term risks and consequences of the administration of puberty-blocking drugs. 6. In respect of young persons aged 16 and over, the legal position is that there is a statutory presumption that they have the ability to consent to medical treatment. Given the long-term consequences of the clinical interventions at issue in this case, and given that the treatment is as yet innovative and experimental, the court recognized that clinicians may well regard these as cases where the authorization of the court should be sought before starting treatment with puberty-blocking drugs. 7. The court has granted a declaration to reflect the points on which the application succeeded. Note: this summary is provided to assist in understanding the divisional court's decision. It does not form a part of the reasons for the decision. The full judgment of the divisional court is the only authoritative document. Judgments are public documents and are publicly available. A copy of the judgment in final form as handed down can be made available after 10:30 a.m. on the 1st of December 2020 on request by email to the Administrative Court Office list office at hmcts.x.gsi.gov.uk. Back to the article. Now that Bell's claim is successful, if subject to appeal, a further layer of safeguarding may be implemented so that gender identity medics must apply to the court for permission to arrest the puberty development of a distressed child. Tavistock will undoubtedly appeal. The clinic's standard of care with regard to the children have been interrogated and found wanting. A panel of 3 High Court judges found that there were 9 elements required for a child to be deemed capable of informed consent. At the age of 14, Bell, seeking an explanation for her distress, says she wanted to be perceived as a boy. After 3, count them, 1, 2, 3, 3, 3, 3, 1, 2, 3, at the age of 14, 3 counseling sessions at the age of 14. I can't stress that enough. If this was how my body dysmorphia and anorexia and depression and ADHD was treated when I was 14 years old, I would have ended up with breast implants. I would have ended up with a rhinoplasty. I would have ended up with, I would have cut my labia off. I would have, oh my God, the things I would have done. I would have had leg extensions because I wanted to be, I was so obsessed. I really believed that one day I would be able to do this to myself. I don't know why. I'm just gonna, there you go, okay. I would have had my toes shortened. I would have had my hooded eyelids corrected. I I would have had braces put on even though my teeth are straight. The amount of cosmetic surgery that I would have had just to assuage my body dysmorphia would have been like one of those extreme makeovers. Clinicians at the Tavistock and Portman NHS Trust prescribed puberty blockers for her at the age of 16. At 17, clinicians prescribed wrong-sex hormones, and at 20, she had a double mastectomy. When surgery came around, I thought of it as more of a practicality situation. I was sick of wearing my binder, Bell said. It was painful and an annoyance. I was unhappy with how my breasts looked, even more so at that point than before. Bell subsequently came to regret those procedures, describing them as evil, and enjoys being a woman. She no longer thinks of herself as trans. She is concerned, however, that trans-affirmative medical experiments may prevent her from having children. Here's a tweet from Feminist Current. Arguing that children cannot consent to being sterilized and the loss of sexual function, her hope in bringing the claim was to protect other children from being subjected to the same irreversible harm. She has succeeded in that laudable goal. Another tweet for her. Mrs. A, who was also a claimant in the case, has a 15-year-old daughter who wants to undergo trans-affirmative procedures. She will not be able to begin that process until she reaches the age of 16, by which time it would be too late for puberty blockers to achieve the desired effect. Permanent deformation and restricted growth of developing secondary sexual organs in preparation for the experimental plastic surgeries. As such, Mrs. A's daughter has been prevented from having her body irreversibly harmed in a manner she stands a 90% chance of living to regret. The court also ruled that clinicians should apply to the court whenever there is doubt that the long-term interests of a 16 or 17-year-old would be served by the clinical interventions of blockers or wrong-sex hormones. It is likely that the Gender Identity Clinic, as the losing party, will appeal to the Supreme Court to defend their policy of performing sex change procedures on children. Nonetheless, the decision deals a decisive blow to the expanding pediatric trans healthcare industry in the UK. Also, checking in with their insurers will be the NHS's Litigation Defence Fund. Providers of such healthcare worldwide will now be considering their options and whether they can afford the litigation risk of continuing to mutilate children's healthy bodies. Vindication. Like, I just feel so just happy and successful, and like, thank God that so many children will be saved. Thank freaking the universe. Thank Goddess. Thank Gaia. Thank the fucking, I don't know what the fuck. Thank the sun. Thank whatever. I'm just thankful. I'm so thankful. The Tavistock Clinic argued that clinicians are able to assess which child's pubertal development needs to be arrested and which child's sexual development should be interfered with. Fenella Morris, QC, representing the NHS Trust, argued that it was a radical proposal to suggest children were incapable of informed consent to gender identity-based medical procedures, which would render them sterile. Fenella Morris. Your name should be Fenella Moron. What the fuck do you mean, a radical proposal to suggest that children were incapable of informed consent to gender identity ideology-based medical procedures? How do you mean that it's a radical proposal to say that children couldn't understand what the long-term ramifications of this is? I bet you they're pro-pedophilia too. The judges disagreed and drew line against the practice. Gillick competence and the Montgomery criteria are the tests for whether or not a child can consent to ordinary medical treatment, which does not result in permanent damage, without parental permission. If the medic considers that the child is mature enough to understand the implications of treatment, parental rights can be overridden. This begs the question of how a child can know what it means to lose their future fertility and sexual function, a question to which the court answered, no! Ha-ha! Since the 2000s, the Tavistock has treated hundreds of children, some as young as 10, sometimes against their parents' wishes. The most commonly used blocker is triptolin, a powerful drug licensed to treat advanced prostate cancer in men, to chemically castrate male sex offenders, and to halt precocious puberty. It is not licensed as a cure for the mental health condition known as gender dysphoria. I'll repeat that again. It is not licensed as a cure for the mental health condition known as gender dysphoria. Girls are particularly vulnerable to being drawn into the trans healthcare system. In 2009, 40 girls under 18 were referred to the gender identity ideology-based treatment in England. By 2017, this... I'm shocked. Fucking shocked. By 2017, this had multiplied to 1,806, prompting suggestion that social contagion was at play. Bell's claim is essentially an appeal for reproductive justice. It is the latest in a line of cases which began in 1976 with Loretta Ross, a successful suit against the manufacturer of contraceptive IUD Dalkenshield, which cost her her fertility, a risk known to the U.S. Center for Disease Control since 1973. The global fight for women's healthcare has a long history. From the campaign against the Contagious Diseases Acts of the 1860s to the Irish survivors of symphysiotomy and the vaginal mesh scandal in the last decade, that girls are being sterilized before they are old enough to comprehend the loss will hopefully, if there is any justice, join that list. Oh, a tweet from Kathleen Stock. One day, the full story will emerge about what exactly has happened at the Tavian Port Gender Identity Service. How therapists with backgrounds in post-structuralist philosophy at the head of service came to believe they were forging new meanings with kids' bodies. Sick. Sick, 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 sick. The decision of the court in favor of Bell has opened the way for clinical negligence claims by other children who have been harmed. Indeed, medical negligence specialists are already accepting clients. Trans healthcare providers the world over and parents of children who think they are trans have a lot to think about. Here's another tweet saying they stand with Keira. So it kills me that girls like Keira have suffered at the hands of the trans healthcare medical industrial complex. But thanks to incredible brave women like her, we can continue to fight and protect our daughters and our sisters and our mothers and any other woman who might be negatively impacted by gender identity ideology. So in closing, TERF gang, rise up. Keep fighting. Be loud, make content. Don't be afraid of the trans cult.